You're going to the middle?
Yes, right here. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What a pleasure it is to be here to talk to these two absolute stalwarts. And then we've got two more stalwarts coming up afternoon, Mr. Ambani and Mr. Pink. It's great to see you both here. Without further ado, let's dive straight into it. I think Hitesh, in his opening remarks, Mr. Kamath, gave us a very clear indication of where we currently find ourselves as far as the Indian financial sector is concerned, especially the opportunity for players like Jio BlackRock. And I want to understand from you what you believe will be the levers, the triggers that will lead to this transformation of the current assets under management for the mutual fund industry to double over the next 5 years.
Thank you, Shereen, and good afternoon. We ride on the India story. The India story, we now talk of a 10% growth. I believe that 10% growth is sustainable. And my experience in banking shows that if you're growing at 10%, financial services business typically grows at 15%. So we should simply compound at 15% and you'll have a doubling of the assets. But that's only part of the story. I think there is also going to be reallocation of money from savings to investment. So you can put a number, I don't want to speculate. My belief is the mutual fund industry in India is going to more than double over the next 5 years. Given a 10% growth and the shift from money lying in savings account at very low interest rates into investment accounts which give you higher rates.
Well, that's good news for the mutual fund industry. What about banks, sir? They're already complaining about deposit mobilization.
Yeah, we'll talk about banks another day. And I have talked many times about this. I think everybody has to reinvent, so banks also will have to reinvent themselves. But we are talking of this business.
Yes.
And I think we are talking of our joint venture, which has no legacy. I would think what is critical in today's world, not just for us, but in any business is, what's your legacy situation? And are you willing to deal with legacy? I think we are privileged because we have no legacy at all. So we are at the right time at this moment, and we will have to keep being at the right time as we grow.
You know, Rob, let me pick up on the phrase that Mr. Kamath used, we're at the right time. Are you also at the right place? Of course, the experience with India goes back over 15 years now. Why the belief to want to double down on India at this time?
Well, first, it's an honor to be here, and it's so exciting to have the opportunity to be here today, having launched the asset manager and having launched the wealth management company. If you take a step back, when we announced what we were doing here together as Jio BlackRock, the aggregate mutual fund industry was roughly 650 billion. Now it's 900 billion less than 3 years later. So I think this question of, is it going to double? I think it's certainly going to double. The question is, how big should it be? And if you believe, which we strongly do at BlackRock, if you believe that India is going to become the third largest economy in the world, I think we'd all agree that the capital markets need to grow. I think we'd all agree that the mutual fund industry needs to be a lot bigger than under $1 trillion, which it is today. So when we look at the opportunity set, we think in many regards it's just beginning. As we think about where India is today in terms of its capital markets, as we think about where India is today in terms of financial services, and importantly, where it is with regard to wealth and asset management, in many regards, it's like what the United States or like the United Kingdom was if you go back 20, 30 years ago. People are buying mutual funds, and they're buying good mutual funds. They're paying very high prices, they're paying high distribution costs, and they're sort of collecting funds as opposed to having the opportunity to really understand, what am I investing for? What is my outcome that I aspire to? And how do you actually build a portfolio with the right building blocks to achieve that outcome? And that's what's so exciting to us, is that in many regards in India today, that space is open. The combination of technology that we're able to bring through BlackRock, and importantly, the distribution, reach, and brand of Jio, bringing those two together enables us to really deliver something unique to the market here.
Rob, if I can just double down on what you said there, and you talked about the headroom for growth here in India. I want to put this in the context of what you're seeing globally. Today, for BlackRock, assets under management, 11 trillion at last count, or perhaps even more higher or higher. So if we are where the US and UK were 20 years ago, what do you think is imperative in terms of the way that products are designed, in terms of the way that you distribute these products to customers, and the use of technology? And how can we leverage technology to accelerate growth?
Well, a lot of the use of technology in India for so much of the consumer experience is highly, highly, highly personalized. And when you look with regard to financial services and asset management, it hasn't really caught up in the same way as so many other aspects of India has. So for example, the ability to really understand what someone's objective is. I want to retire at this age. I want to save for a wedding. Understanding that and backing into the right portfolio, automatically rebalancing that portfolio. And I think very different than many other aspects of someone's life, the real miracle of investing is that compounding of return. So if you could save 10 basis points, 0.1%, year after year after year after year with regard to expenses, and if you could generate 0.5%, 1%, 2%, 3% of extra return as you aspire to that outcome, the effect could be profound. So the opportunity here in terms of bringing these methods that are really at this point quite common in other parts of the world, bringing them to India and the scale that India provides, it's so exciting to us. If you look at Jio BlackRock, we launched roughly 7 months ago, and we have 1 million customers. There are very few places in the world where that would even be a thing. That would even be an aspiration. So the ability to take what we've built at BlackRock for so many decades and implement it locally at the scale, at the consumer level, there are very few places in the world where you could really do that like you can in India.
So 1 million customers in India, what's the aspiration in the next few years?
It depends on if you ask the two of us or if you ask Larry and Mukesh.
Let me start with you. Let me start with you.
I don't see any reason why. Well, first, I think many more people in India need to enter the capital markets. I think many more people in India need to take advantage of that miracle of the compounding of returns. And there's no reason why, as we look forward 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, there can't be many millions of Indians benefiting from the capabilities of Jio BlackRock.
Mr. Kamath, you said that we need to move beyond legacy, and in many ways we need to start afresh. Let me ask you that in the context of the use of technology, but also designing products that are going to be relevant for the Indian market. Also the regulatory recalibration perhaps that is required to ensure that we go from the 800 billion that we currently are at and grow, twice as much.
Yeah, I think break it into 2 parts or 3 parts. One is product capability. I think our partners bring that in abundance. I think they are the leaders in the world, and they have the ability to model and design products as appropriate to any geography. So I think they have now understood this market along with the new vehicle that we have, and now I think we can bring the knowledge that they have gained elsewhere to this market. So I have no doubt about that. And here it's very interesting. So you have a phase where you need to understand whether the company, our customer is willing to use technology. We had that experience aplenty in the bank. The customer was willing to use technology. Every bank said the customer is not willing to take technology. And that's what we saw happen from 2000 onwards today. I think the same thing needs to be done in the mutual fund industry. There's a particular way we expected the customer to deal with us through an agent network, for example. Question today that could be asked is the customer willing to deal with us directly, or in a hybrid way, but more directly? Can we have large part of the business direct? And that's the model that has been launched. And in a way, the first few months were a test of this, I would say, approach. And it is clearly proven to be right. For example, we have not talked about it, but of the 1 million or so customers that Rob talked about, there are 100% have come online. About 25% are new to mutual fund who have come online. So, and I told my colleagues that I can't believe this number, because if I put myself in new to mutual funds, I have not been into mutual funds, and I'm going to come online and get on and buy a mutual fund, I would have said, I will hesitate. But the young Indian is not hesitating.
That's Gen Z for you, sir.
Exactly. So we need to learn one minute. It's not. I got an anecdote to this, which is even more interesting. So clearly, that is proven that you are getting people online who are new to this. We need to scale this up now, and imagine 10x or 50x in terms of what we have done. If it is 1 million, what is that X number? They will determine in quick order. Other thing is, then we tested this hypothesis of Gen Z or Gen Alpha or earlier. So I mentioned this to some people, I knew who were on our common boards and so on. And I just mentioned, and I had a message from one of these people, very well regarded, everybody knows him, so I won't name him. He says, I got on this, and he didn't tell me I was getting on. In 1 minute, I had my account going. 1 minute. And Hitesh told me a story yesterday that somebody else that he mentioned too, in 1.5 minutes, I had my account going. So clearly, I think you provide appropriate technology. India has come of age to say that I am willing to experiment with that technology irrespective of my age. And I think that we learned during COVID, because everybody had to become literate in a way to use a machine and transact financially. So that, I think, is an advantage that we have. And it works to any, service provider, financial services provider, which is digital first and has low legacy.
Well, you're giving quick commerce a whole new meaning now, Mr. Kamath. Account openings in a minute and a half. But Rob, coming back
But
to...
wait a minute. Jio Payment Bank, we open an account in 3 minutes. So please try it out.
You should try it later. Open an account.
I most certainly will. But Rob, coming back to the use of technology and AI specifically, and we were all in Davos, and if I were to do a word cloud, if it wasn't President Trump, it was artificial intelligence and AI. The use of AI specifically, you and your team are behind Aladdin, and that clearly symbolizes the magic of artificial intelligence. But what happens to human stock pickers? I mean, are they going to be relevant any longer?
Absolutely. And I think what's important about investing is that part of it is art and part of it is science. And I think if you look at the different methodologies that we have within BlackRock, we have quantitative capabilities, and a lot of those quantitative capabilities we were able to transport to India in terms of how we actually leverage AI to create alpha signals. But at the same time, you have human intuition. And importantly, going back to this concept of stock pickers, if you think about what the traditional process has been, you have a group of people who lock themselves in a room and they read stuff. And no matter how much of a speed reader you are, there's only so much stuff you could read in a given amount of time. And now you have these capabilities that really enable the human to have access to someone who could read everything produced in the world, who could summarize everything produced in the world, who could figure out trends, themes, and actually use it to inform the human intuition, use it to inform the human stock picking. So I think there's room, at least for the next decade, there's room certainly for both. And it's really the human to the power of AI, more so than we have robots sort of choosing stocks for the rest of time.
So we still have a decade.
At least. I'll reassess in a decade.
You'll reassess that. But we've got about 30 seconds left. Mr. Kamath, I'm going to start by asking you, you're a perennial India bull. What makes you most specifically bullish on the India story in light of the fact that we have just presented a budget which has laid out the roadmap for a more medium to long-term bet on the knowledge economy, on artificial intelligence, on electronic manufacturing? What makes India most compelling today?
Yeah, very simple, Shereen. I look for patterns in everything that happens. You look for examples and patterns. So you look at transformation stories in a country context. Japan, 20 years, went from nothing to very powerful. We're talking about 70, 90. China, late 90s to 2015, similar story. Our story has started only 4 or 5 years back. And if you look around us, we know how much is to be done. So that gives you the path, as it were, or the runway, as it were. And that, to me, is at least 15 to 20 years, minimum. So you have the runway. And then you see all the exciting things that you mentioned just now happening. You put one on top of the other. You have a pathway for the next 20 years, which is definitely going to be at least 10% year-on-year growth. And within that, we stitch our story.
Within that, we stitch our story. Rob Goldstein, the final word to you. What makes India the most compelling story for you?
I've had the privilege of coming here since 2010. And when you have the opportunity to travel the world, and India is part of your rotation, you could see with your own eyes the opportunity. You see the opportunity, how it emerges with regard to human capital. You see the opportunity, how it emerges with regard to technology here. And even importantly, you see the opportunity with regard to infrastructure and something like the coastal road and how that's changed the whole city of Mumbai. So as we look at India, the opportunity set here is striking. There are a few places where you'll get off a plane anywhere in the world that will have the growth rate, that will have the knowledge base, that will have the STEM graduates, and importantly, you will have as many people on an absolute basis, just the sheer numbers of people who are entering the middle class, who are entering that mass affluent and affluent segment, it's unparalleled anywhere in the world.
An unparalleled story. Rob Goldstein, KV Kamath, thank you so much for setting the stage for where India stands, but more importantly for the headroom for growth for India's financial services sector and for the mutual fund industry in specific. And thank you very much for articulating for us what Jio BlackRock's plans are for India. Appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for KV Kamath and Rob Goldstein. Thank you very much.
Thank you.